All right, let's dive in. If you're gearing up for your GCSE computer science exams, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're tackling a topic that is guaranteed to come up: file handling. Think of this as the missing manual you've been looking for. Okay, so let's kick things off with a problem I bet you've hit before. You spend ages coding this amazing game, you finally get a new high score, you're super proud of it, but then you close the program and poof, it's just gone. Why on earth does that happen? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. All that data, including your awesome high score, was only being stored in the computer's RAM. And RAM is what we call volatile memory, which is just a fancy way of saying that as soon as the power goes off, it forgets everything. If you want your data to stick around, you need what's called persistent storage, and that's where files come in. So, how do we fix this? Well, the good news is, to get you saving and loading data like a pro, you only really need to master 4 core operations. This is your essential toolkit, and pretty much every exam question you'll face on this topic boils down to using these 4 steps. And here they are: open, read, write, and close. It makes perfect sense when you think about it, right? You can't read from a notebook without opening it first, and you should always close it when you're done to make sure nothing gets messed up. It's exactly the same logic for files in your code. So, let's break them down. First up, you have to open the file. This command is basically your program saying to the computer, hey, I need to use this file right here. It's like taking a book off the shelf and cracking it open. Until you do this, your program literally can't see what's inside or add anything new. It's step 1, always. Next up is read. So once the file is open, this is how you pull information out of it and into your program. Want to load that old high score? You'll use a read command to grab it from the file and pop it into a variable so you can actually use it. And here's the bit that saves the day: write. This is how you get data from your program into the file. So when you smash that high score, you'll use a write command to add it to the file, saving it for the next time you play. It usually just adds the new line right at the very end. And finally, and I can't stress this enough, the most important step: close. This tells the computer, okay, I'm done with this file now. This is what actually finalizes all the changes and saves everything properly. Seriously, if you forget this step, you might lose your data, or even worse, corrupt the entire file. So whatever you do, don't forget to close it. Right, that's the theory covered, but what does this actually look like in code? Let's get into the OCR exam reference language, because this is exactly the format you'll see in your exam paper. So you're going to want to pay close attention to the syntax here. The good news is, it's actually really straightforward. To open a file, you just use the open command, with the file's name in quotes. The really crucial bit is that you assign this to a variable. Here, we've called it my file. That variable is now like your handle for the file. Then, to close it, you just use that same variable name and stick .close on the end. Simple as that. And for reading and writing, it's just as logical. To read a line of text from the file, you use .readline, and you save whatever it finds into a new variable. To write a new line to the file, you use .writeline, and just put the text you want to save right there in the brackets. Okay, so reading one line is great, but what if a file has, I don't know, a list of 10 high scores and you need to read all of them? For that, you need to use a loop. Now, this next technique is a total classic. It comes up in exams all the time, so let's make sure you have this one locked in. This is the exact code you need to remember. It's a while loop. Now, that .end of file part, that only becomes true when the computer has read past the very last line in the file. So by saying while not my file.end of file, we're basically just telling the program, hey, keep on looping as long as we have not reached the end yet. You know, if you ever get stuck looking at that code in an exam, just try translating it into plain English in your head. It really helps. While not my file.end of file literally just means keep going as long as we're not at the end of the file. And inside that loop, we just tell it to read the next line and do something with it. The loop will automatically stop when it's done. Whew, okay, we've covered a lot of ground there pretty quickly, so let's just take a moment and boil all of that down into the absolute must-know facts for your exam. Think of this as your final checklist for file handling. So let's recap the big stuff. 1. Data in variables disappears, but data in files is forever. Well, until you delete it. 2. You have to know those 4 operations: open, read, write, and the all-important close. 3. Always open a file into a variable. 4. Always close the file to save your changes. And finally, if you need to read a whole file, that while not my file.endOfFile loop is your absolute best friend. And to finish up, I'll leave you with a little something to think about. We've been talking about game high scores, but think about your actual school. What other kinds of data in a school's computer system would be totally useless if they weren't saved permanently to a file? Thinking about these real-world examples is one of the best ways to make sure this knowledge really sticks.